here. Oh yeah, we're gonna do that. Oh yeah, we do that. That's
Okay, yeah.
Oh no,
That's
that's
the only thing you said.
Yeah, well, we got a quorum.
Yeah.
we're advanced here. All right, let's see here.
Quorum, that's the magic number. That may be the magic number.
3 is
for
it.
this year too, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see. So with 3, we'll get started. I know Councilor Lopez texted me and said he had an issue come up, so he couldn't make it, so.
Oh, okay.
Councilor Leahy should be on the way. But with that, make a motion to open the Finance Committee for October 11th at 6:30.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? With that, do we have people here for the grants yet? So we'll take those up and then we'll jump right into those who are here because you're on time. So, Andrew, which one's yours? The The first two?
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
so,
There you go.
well, we'll get rid of the first one. Previous minutes of the meeting, did we get those? I never got an email.
I don't think I got
I
it.
All right,
don't
so
remember.
make a motion to
table.
table that until we receive them, because now
Second.
we receive, okay, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So be it. All right, so item number 2, make a motion to remove from the table.
So move.
All's in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This one is in order that, in accordance to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accept the Log Pond Cove project grant. Andrew, want to come in and explain this one?
Where should I go? I'm always
You come on and sit down, relax. Just make sure the light's on. Pull up a chair.
That doesn't mean you have to stay all night, though.
well, if it's comfortable. I might. So.
The only thing is, we just noticed that if you hear the humming, it's like an
It's-
ongoing humming.
We
It's
can't
like-
stop it.
It's like white noise, right? You know, it's like
After a while,
loud
it becomes
white
quite
noise.
penetrating.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll try and get through this relatively quickly, because that is bad.
it's present.
All right, so off to you.
Okay, so Log Pond Cove, as people are aware, you can see it in the painting behind you. You see the dam over there and the train tracks, and then you see this sort of beaver impoundment with 1, 2, 3, 4 beaver lodges, and that is Log Pond Cove. Since 2000, the city, under Alicia Zoller, the prior conservation director, has been working with Gas and Electric and U.S. Fish and Wildlife on controlling an invasive species infestation down there. There's a problem with water chestnut, and water chestnut grows really quickly. It's a 14-acre impoundment, and some years it's completely covered over, and some years it's not. So what we've done in the past, we've experimented with using herbicides. Everything's permitted through, NIMFS, which is National Marine Fisheries, and everything else. And the herbicides are effective up to a point. They usually leave about 20% of the cove uncovered, like untreated, unaffected. And that results in, let's say, 1.4 acres. Actually, my math is off, but let's say 1.4 acres remains out of the entire impoundment that is untreated. So what that 1 acre can do of water chestnut is it can, in effect, have a seed stock for 100 acres. So every year there's enough to completely reinfest the site. So I worked closely with Sarah LaRose at Gas and Electric on this. She's been a rock star on this topic. And what we decided with the two of us is that we're not going to get involved in herbicides anymore because it doesn't achieve the result that we're looking for. So what we did is we came up with a partnership through, it's kind of complicated, but it's builds off of the existing partnership. You have the Connecticut River Watershed Council, which is now the Connecticut River Conservancy. They changed their name. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Gas and Electric, and the city's conservation office. And basically there's different entities putting money in. Gas and Electric has put some money in. Fish and Wildlife has put some money in. In DEP, there was some remaining funding from sort of multiple settlements with coal tar impacts in the river. And I think probably 5 years ago, I'd gone to a meeting and said, could you set aside some of this money for treating the water chestnut problem here in the city? Fast forward 5 years, there's still money left over, and they said, we have some money, what would you like to use it for? And the proposal was to, it's a combination of factors. So there's this piece of equipment called a WeDo, which is basically like a jet ski with a bunch of, it's like a mini excavator on a jet ski, and what that does is it scoops up all the weeds, puts it in a baler, and then everything gets thrown on the shore, and then it decomposes pretty quickly because it's an aquatic species. And so U.S. Fish and Wildlife purchased that piece of machinery. What they have is they have like a mutual aid agreement with. So it's the Silvio Conti Refuge, which is like the Connecticut River Refuge, and they can use that anywhere within the refuge, which is the whole Connecticut River. And so the money that's in front of you, that's used for paying for staff time, for operating, for coordinating volunteers, and and because of complicated things that I don't entirely understand, the Watershed Council hired the staff to pay for the operation for the volunteer coordination, because that's separate from what the federal government can do. The federal government provided the equipment operator to operate the equipment, and they maintain it, and they're the ones who are responsible for it. And so this money would just go to help kind of paying for the volunteer organizing efforts. There are teams of volunteers that went out there. There are students that at UMass help coordinate volunteers. And so it's a combination of hand pulling and this piece of equipment to get the invasives out of the cove. And the reason why you want to get out of the cove is it's some places it can really impact navigation. Like, say, for example, the seeds got into the canals. Like, they could become so overpowering that it makes it difficult to operate sort of the turbines that are in the canal system. So there's in addition to the ecosystem advantages, there's also sort of like infrastructural advantages to controlling the infestation. And we're going to have a report pretty soon on the document on the efforts from this year, and we'll be able to know how the treatment went in comparison to other years, and we'll have some percentages that we could work off of. But the goal is to not use chemicals, and the goal is to use sort of a local approach to dealing with a watershed-wide problem. And that's what the money would be for this year.
Any questions for Andrew? Yeah, go ahead.
I like this approach because in other arenas, I've been involved in this kind of thing, only different kind of invasive things. And I think you're doing the right thing, because the chemicals, like you say, they work this much and then you're still at square one. So
Yep.
I think it's a great collaboration, complicated, but nonetheless, 5 years in the making. Shows you got to just put it out there, right?
That is correct.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for coming down and explaining that to us. What is the time frame when they usually do this with the excavator?
So that happens in the summertime. So they have this this period of biological availability for the seeds. And so what you want to do is you want to treat them being hand pulling and removal right before they start to set the seeds. So it's usually early August, late July is when everything gets removed. So a lot of this work has already taken place under the other partners that are working on it. So this would just free up resources to help pay for some of the other stuff. But the ideal scenario is you take it out in the summertime before the seeds are mature. So this one's, a lot of this has taken place already.
Okay, you said the report, you'll get a report to see how it compared to last year's, and when will that be available?
Yeah, usually we get a PDF, so I'm hoping that, like in the past, the contractors that have been hired will provide something. So either Fish and Wildlife, somebody will, I don't know who will, but someone will do a report, because we have to know if it works because there's like federal grants that are funding other portions of this. So we'll know like how many bales and how many like tons were taken out and the percent coverage at the end of it. So that stuff will all be available. It's not available now, but in order for this to proceed, like that information has to be made available at some point.
Okay, thank you.
So Andrew, it's $22,073 for this grant.
Correct.
And if we accept the grant, who is accounting for it? Who's watching the money and payouts of it? Who's we? All right, so the auditor's in charge of watching over it. So what is it going to pay for?
So there's it's a combination of staff time and equipment time. So there's staff hours from Fish and Wildlife and the Watershed Council, I believe, that were allocated towards various organizing activities for getting stuff out of the cove.
So we have volunteers helping, and then we have staff. Who's the staff? Is it state employees? Is it city employees? Who is it?
So nobody from the city is getting paid anything for this. So it would be, I think the Connecticut River Conservancy has like a dedicated staff person who's doing all this stuff. And so part of this money pays for that. And that's pretty much it. I know that everything, so we have like benchmarks that we have to meet, and because there's a combination of federal dollars involved, you can't,
Well, I guess my question is, so the staffers from somewhere, it's not a city person, but we're accepting funds to pay for that as well as equipment.
correct.
Are they giving us an invoice? Or
They will
that
have
what-
to, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And who's watching over that in a sense of, I'm the staffer, I'm doing 10 hours. Who's accounting for it? Is it their department's accounting for it? They're just sending us a,
So I've received a draft invoice, and it's got hours broken down, and it has name, person, time, that sort of things, and we don't have an account to pay it out of yet. So there is a draft invoice that's available. Josh would be involved with reviewing the invoice, and there's no match requirement, which is good.
That would be the next question.
yeah, I looked through this, I didn't say, no match.
No match.
So we're getting money to help do this, which is great. Linda is absolutely correct on trying not to use chemicals and do another alternative. I guess my question would be, is we accept the grant, this year it goes well, we cover it, no money comes in next year. As we see with grants all the time, no money comes in next year. Are we on the hook for anything, or is this, once the grant's out, we're not liable to the staff or anything else?
No, this one's weird because once it's accepted, it doesn't expire with the fiscal year. So say, for example, only like $10,000 gets spent this year, there would still be the remaining $12,000 in the account for future years. And this is a concern that's been ongoing since 2000, is that when you look at the various costs and obligations that for whatever reason we've all agreed to take on, believe me, Sarah and I both tried to get out of this project as hard as we could.
When did this happen?
Yeah. When you look at the expenses, like the easiest thing to do would be dredging it, right? So you dredge everything out, but you're looking at, you could do this work for 100 years and still not equal the cost of dredging it out, because you're looking, I think it was like $2.4 million to dredge it out. So what we're trying to do is strike the balance between, the most cost effective, the least environmentally damaging. And funding will always kind of be an issue, but for some reason we, for the past, 17 years, like funding has always been able to show up, whether it's through a grant or foundation. So there's no guaranteed, future funding sources, but I do know that the Watershed Council, the Watershed Conservancy, and talking to Andy Fisk, that I think, there's a lot of write proposals and see if they get funded, and that's how it works. But I think their goal is to do a watershed-wide approach. And they've applied to NIMFS, which is National Marine Fisheries Service, for a watershed-wide invasive species approach. And the piece of equipment itself isn't going to go away. That's still property of the Conti Refuge. So that's a hard cost. They sunk $80,000 into the equipment. So there will be, I think that's throughout the watershed. That's the approach that is going to be pursued. So funding will, with like everything else, it's always going to be a matter of being creative and finding funding sources.
Having weed pulling parties.
Yeah. That's what we did more of this year. And once you clear the cove out enough, you can get in there. But until you clear it out, it's really hard to get in there.
Okay. Counselor McGivern's here, and I forgot to say it's Counselor Tallman, Counselor Bacon, Counselor Leahy will be on his way, Counselor Lopez couldn't make it. Joe, you have any questions? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the grant.
A second.
All right, so the motion. It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Awful. All right. Number 3, make a motion move from the table. Item 3.
Second.
All those in
Aye.
favor? All
Aye.
opposed? This is the preparedness grant. And I'll turn it over to you, Andrew.
Okay. So what Governor Baker has done is he has focused the state more on the issue of developing resilient communities that are resilient in the face of events that we're seeing unfold right now. So take, for example, the island of Puerto Rico or the city of Houston. Major climate events or weather events occurred in both of those locations that I mentioned this year. And so what the Baker administration has done is they've created a separate sort of community planning, for lack of a better word, category, and it focuses on community resiliency. And this is going to be a big topic going forward because the scuttlebutt is that they're going to remember. Does anybody remember the old smart growth ranking system that they had, where you would apply for grants, and if you had like 100 points, you were
Oh, that was with the green energy and all that.
yeah, and it
We were
was
doing the solar and all that.
well. This was under
Before
Romney.
that.
Yeah, this was under Romney. It was like I forget what it was called. It had a name, but it was really good to have a high score because you were able to get funding, and Holyoke was
I think that
either
was part of that.
second or third or first every year. There's going to be a discussion going forward about funding infrastructure projects, for example. Like say, for example, a community wants to fund a new bridge and it's not designed in a way that is able of surviving major events. It won't be as likely to get funding. The goal is to, at some point, have every community looking at the long-term picture and asking hard questions about which pieces of infrastructure are vulnerable? How do we armor them? How do we reinforce them? How do we have enough community resiliency to be able to bounce back from an extreme event within the first, 3 days, week, months? Because the goal is to be proactive about changes that are occurring. I think a really, really good example of this is the new Wynn Casino in Boston in the harbor. It's like a $2.2 billion investment, and the gambling industry has made one very important gamble. And what they've done is they put the first floor of the building above the anticipated sea level rise. So they've designed that into the architecture of the building. People who make their money off of gambling have gambled that our communities are going to be impacted in serious ways. So it's a $26,000 grant. And the money would be used to hire a consultant. There's no matching requirement. The consultant is so this is something that's being run out of Governor Baker's DOER programs, and there's a process that consultants have for becoming certified as vendors under the MVP program. So basically, at some point, we're going to get a list of different consultants that are available within our region. We can pick who we're going to hire, and then what will happen is, there's going to be data that's going to be not cooked. That's the wrong word to say. There's going to be data that's going to be prepared for every single community, and you're going to be able to drill down at a really granular level. We'll be able to say wildfires. Which portion of this city is vulnerable to wildfires? Which pieces of critical infrastructure are available? How will it be in the next 20, 30, 50 years? And then, this is where the resiliency comes in, as you think about, different communities that could be affected, how the community can bounce back, and then you come up with a plan for each scenario. And the goal is to give us an opportunity to think about the hard questions that are being faced in some places in the country right now before they happen. It's the first national program of this sort. Connecticut does something with this, but Massachusetts is really kind of leading the charge on making this an issue. There's going to be a statewide resiliency plan. It's going to be tied to Governor Baker's efforts on climate change. So, it's a Republican governor. It's something that he's taken very seriously. So, and it's going to be a matter of public policy going forward. So it behooves cities and towns to get in front of this, because in the future, infrastructure funding decisions are going to be made based upon this information.
Any questions on this one? Seems kind of straightforward. And when will they have the report? Or after all said and done, time frame?
So this one's, so probably next summer, I'm guessing, next summer.
And
So-
all that info will go to you to then,
So part of my task would be organizing stakeholders. So we're talking about police, fire, DPWs, schools, institutions in the city, political leaders, community leaders, to get them to participate in public meetings with the consultant.
Comment if I could.
Linda?
Yeah, I'd just say, given our location, we're in a lot better shape than the Cape and the Islands for this type of thing. So it should be perhaps easier for us to narrow down to the nature of the threats we would have and be able to make a plan.
Absolutely. I mean,
In comparison to those other folks.
Yeah.
So that's good if we get ahead of it and can get it buttoned up. Maybe we can get our bridge quicker.
The bridge that was already designed, but they're redesigning
Yeah.
it, that's my favorite. Mass DOT. Anyone else? No? Is there a motion?
Motion to accept the grant.
Second.
Motion is to approve, it was seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Those two are done.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone here for the next grant, the Attorney General Abandoned Housing? No. Well, we'll skip over it for now. Yeah, we can go out of order. Item 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Make sure I get them all. 11, 12, 13.
Motion to take those up as a package?
So we'll suspend the rules, take them up as a package because they're all the same. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? So, quick reading. Item 5 is a transfer of $3,255 and change from firefighters to injured on duty. And these are all injured on duty. The next one is $7,453 from sergeants and patrolmen to injured on duty. The next one is $6,051 and change from sergeant and patrol to injured on duty. Next one is $6,451 from lieutenants and firefighters and lieutenants to injured on duty. The next one is $12,812 and change, sergeant and patrolman to injured on duty. And then $6,451 from firefighters and lieutenants to injured on duty. The next one is $11,573 from sergeant and patrolman to injured on duty. Number 12 is $4,483 from firemen and lieutenants to injured on duty. And the last one, number 13, is $17,279 from sergeants and patrolmen to injured on duty. So I think we all got a copy of this. When it first came to the city council, it was referred over to us as part of the new ordinance. Anytime we're making transfers within certain lines, it has to come to us for approval. This is something Josh and I talked about, and I did speak with Kevin on that we might take these type of ones and make an exemption from them, but we'll get into that later. That'll be an ordinance committee meeting, but not here. So for now, before us are just transfers from one line item to another to deal with injured on duty. Anyone have any questions? The auditor is here. Yep, Peter?
Yeah, I just had a question, and it's unusual to see two like amounts. Is that a duplicate, or is that items 8 and 10? Looks like the exact amount of money.
They are the same exact amount of money. They are for two
different-
separate pay periods, but for the same exact people.
Oh, for the same, okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure on that one, because.
They are not a duplicate.
Okay, thank you.
Linda?
Thank you. So I know that we were provided with the summary, but I haven't looked at it in a while. So how many people are we talking about in the fire department and in the police department?
Each one is, well, they're different for each
I
one.
mean, for the
based on the
period that
dollar
we're
amount.
looking at.
Well, 6 or 7 from probably each.
Okay. And does that tend to be what it's running?
Yeah, and it changes from period to
Well,
period.
as an
Sometimes
average.
there's 1 or 2, sometimes there's 6 or 7, and I know that there was one that was on injured on duty that just recently got taken off and given disability retirement.
Okay.
But in most cases, they're only on for a couple of weeks and then they're back to work. And in all of these cases, it's not an increase in pay or anything. It's simply changing the
It's
line
the
item that they're
line
paid out.
and where it's coming from,
And it's
Yeah.
simply a W-2 end of the year thing, the way it has to get
how
recorded.
it's paid out,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that, but I do think it is important for us to understand, where the changes are going and how they're
Absolutely.
happening.
I can give you all the names. I have them. with
No,
me.
no, no, I'm,
I-
that's not necessary. I'm not looking for that level of detail. I was just more looking for if there's a trend or like an average or, what sort of just happens, from a budgetary point of view.
Absolutely.
But to the chairman's point, these all came in as individual orders, and I think it would meet our ordinances if they came in as one order with a list. I don't think it's necessary for each one to be a distinct order as a matter of process, do you?
It's,
I think
I
that
mean, that's
makes
something we
it,
can address in the ordinance.
I think
That's
that
like,
makes it more.
I've just put them through the way that I get
Heavy.
them, so I can change that if you.
Well, I'm
like.
just saying, I think it just makes it more work for you to put through all these orders. And if we're doing it periodically, it could just be a summary
Yeah.
attached to one order. But I think the information is important. Thank you.
Joe?
I take it the fire chief and police chief are not coming in this evening?
I don't think so.
I honestly, Joe, that would probably be my fault. I asked the auditor to come in to address the numbers. If you want
Right.
them to come in, I can.
Well, I'm looking at an epidemic. I mean, in 38 years, I've never seen this many people injured on duty.
Have we known?
No? This is, Peter can, I think, agree with me or disagree with me, but 30 years ago, you didn't hear of injured on duty.
Oh, see, to me, it's new information, so I have no idea.
Just to probably make it easier for people at home, the first item, it deals with, it looks like two for the fire department. The next item, hopefully I got them in order correctly, yep, is 1, 2, 3, 4 for the police department, so that's 4 for that pay period. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the next item, so that'd be number 7. That'd be 7 people. Or 6 people, sorry. The next item, number 8, for the fire department, it's 1, 2, 3 people. The next item for 12,000, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that one jumped up. It was 4.
These
one time,
are
I
all
think.
different individual people?
No, some of them are repeat names, Joe. I could read the names if you want.
I'm not challenging individuals. If someone's injured on duty, they certainly are due, to pay, not just by contract, but by ethics and by, the right thing to do. But I've never seen this before. It's incredible, to be averaging 6 or 7 people per department on injured on duty.
Yeah, it's,
Are there any long-term injuries?
The one that retired out, right?
There is one more long-term injury that the retirement board is still waiting for a medical panel back prior to deciding whether or not to give permanent disability to that person. But there's only one that I know of that's long-term that's on this list.
So what you're saying is it averages 6 or 7 per department? They're short-term, and then someone else gets injured, and 6 or 7 more people?
In this particular period, it's been 6 or 7. It's not always 6 or 7. I can actually go back and take a look and break down some of those numbers for you if you'd like to kind of get a better idea of how many have been injured on duty historically. I'm sure I can go back and take a look.
I would appreciate that. Maybe that'll alleviate some of my concerns here. Is there anybody here on administrative leave?
Not that I know of, no. Not in injured on duty, they wouldn't be administrative leave.
And when the money is transferred into injured on duty, it reduces the line items for the officers who are injured,
That's correct.
the general account.
Yep.
So to replace the officers injured on duty, it requires overtime dollars.
Right.
Do we have an idea of how much overtime is being spent?
I haven't broken it down yet, but I can do that for you too.
If you could, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with these,
What do you, a
Is
motion
there-
to receive? I mean, is that where we go with these?
oh, we have to approve. In essence, it's a line item.
Line item.
Gotcha,
To do the new
gotcha.
ordinance, we have to-
So receive and approve.
Yeah. Any other questions with regards to this?
Was 7 the highest number of individuals?
Yeah. If you look
It
at,
sounds like a lot of them are temporary. Yeah, items 10 and 11 were the high, no, 9 and 11. And 11 were the highest.
5, 6, 7, actually, no, 8 is the highest. That's the 17,279.94.
Oh, that's the last
8.
one
That's 8,
in the police department.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So,
I'll make a motion to receive and approve.
so we'll make a motion
Second.
to approve them and a request to have the overtime prior to the full city council meeting. Possible overtime to cover injured on duty. So, is there a second to that?
Second.
So
Right,
motion
and
to,
I don't know if we're in order to, request information as to any steps being taken by each department for injury prevention. I mean,
We
it's-
talked about
I don't
that,
think
yeah.
it's our jurisdiction to talk about anybody's individual situation, but typically, when you see an increase, if this is, and I'm hearing it is, a significant increase, you would be looking for the department head to be taking steps to mediate that and mitigate it and, in the interest of the employees, so they're not, so I would just be interested to know, not in individual detail, but in general, what steps are being taken in that regard for the,
I think with that, you can file an order, we can all file
We'll
an
need a
order
separate
to
order?
say-
Okay.
Not to say, what's that, are there steps being taken, can we be more proactive and actually ask what training they're doing? And that information you can get.
I also just got 2 of them put on my desk today, so I could actually go take a look and see if any of these names have come off since then.
okay.
And while you guys are discussing one of your other topics, I'll run over to my office quick. That way I can give you some more
Okay.
info.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so, no,
That's good.
Little segue there.
all right, so the motion was to approve with a request for the OT update, overtime. That was seconded, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All is opposed? So that passed, and that was a package, so all of them passed. And I'll write that. These all after.
Motion to take up item 4?
All right,
I'll
so
second
next
that.
item 4.
4, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 4 is the Office of Attorney General Abandoned Housing Grant, and Paul is here, so Paul, why don't you come on in, please? Yeah, take a seat, yeah. There's- Tell us a little bit about this grant?
Sure. I guess it's almost seems like almost a year ago we applied for it. So this is a program administered through the State Attorney General's office. They have a division, the Abandoned Housing Initiative. This is the same unit that assists the city with some of our receivership cases, and that former city attorney, Kara Cunha, is currently in that position. So they have some funding available every year for demolition of unsafe buildings. We submitted a grant application, like I said, almost about a year ago now. It's matching funds, so this is a $50,000 grant. It's specifically tied to 405, 407 Main Street. This is the building, if you're driving down Main Street on the left-hand side, It's right across from the Greek Orthodox Church by Nueva Esperanza. It's really just one facade that's still standing. The rest of it is completely collapsed. And it seems like about a year or two ago, I know the fire department did a list of the most dangerous buildings in the city. And also the building commissioner, maintains sort of a list, as to what the sort of most serious structural concerns are. So we applied for a grant for both this property and another property, 289 Main Street, 285 Main Street, which is the El Tropico building, has an El Tropico sign. It's across from the gas station, the Racing Mart. So they provided funding for this one. As I mentioned, it's a matching grant. And we have put a bid out. The bids came in higher than we expected. And we're preparing to rebid to hopefully get an affordable, feasible option for it. But it's a great resource that the Attorney General's office has, and hopefully with the successful demolition of this property, we might be able to go back to them in the future for funding for other buildings.
Linda?
Thank you. Can we use community development block grants to match since it's in this area?
Yes, yeah, you'd be able
Excellent.
to, yeah, it would be eligible for that. And I think that, the cost of it, we originally estimated at about 100,
Yeah.
kind of knowing that the max that they give out to any one municipality is 50,000. I mentioned we had 2 properties on that, but I think that was a conservative estimate. So the cost is higher than that, but I think CDBG funds have been dedicated for that. Set aside. Like I mentioned, it's been about a year, so it's something that has been in the works for a while, and that money's been earmarked.
So what'd the bids come back at?
I think, as I mentioned, it is being rebid, so the price proposals are not yet public, but they were higher than we expected.
Higher than 100,000, is what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
So it says grant amount is 50,000, not to exceed 50% of the total demolition cost, of which we'll have a match. We can use CDBG money based on what you're saying, but has CDBG money been allocated to do this?
Yes, so that money's been earmarked as program dollars from this past year, yeah.
So it is in
So
there.
that's good.
Yeah.
So it's not can, is.
It is in there.
Yes,
Because we don't have free cash yet.
Right.
Have it
but maybe,
certified.
yeah, that might be like I mentioned, the bids came in higher than we expected, so the amount that we had allocated was close to, but sort of on the upper range of, if you factor in the contingencies and demolition concepts that I'm not terribly familiar with, but it makes sense that you're usually, I guess, looking at 20% to factor in contingencies of, if demolition becomes more complex than is expected from the bid. So to play it safe, that's the sort of move forward.
What happens if we accept the grant, so we are now on the hook for a match? CDBG was allocated, but it's only allocated for, I'm gonna assume 50.
We
Comes
wouldn't.
back at 200.
We wouldn't, if the project fell through, the worst case scenario would be that it wouldn't.
We
it
wouldn't
be-
accept the money?
Right, we wouldn't have any financial liability. It's not like the city would lose its matching portion or anything like that. The downside would be that for future grant
It would be tough,
proposals,
yeah.
it would not. And this is a major, it really is, along with 285 Main Street, these are the sort of top of the list in every sense. So
Let's hope we can get there.
right. It's a matter of and really all the departments have really worked cooperatively. OCD, building department, purchasing department to put this on the priority and move it. It's unfortunate that it takes the time it takes. But I know from just watching the inner workings, things are moving at each deadline that they can occur at. And you'll see from that grant award, it stated a deadline of March 31st. That's been extended by the AG's office, and we've been talking to them about, although it's only one facade, because it's sandwiched between two buildings, it is
It's touchy, right?
difficult, yeah.
Any other Peter? Joe?
Yeah, Paul, thanks for coming down and explaining that, and I know that's one of the buildings we've been talking about often near Nueva, how it's just that front part and that sort of fell in, part of it already has fallen in. With this, this grant and the match, would it take care of just that one building or the two buildings?
It would just be for the 405 Main Street. The grant funds can only be used for that one property.
Okay, and the other one is just something that's on the list, that's something maybe down the road, that future grant, 285 Main, you said was? in batch?
285 Main Street, right. So that's something that's being approached now. Both of these properties are way behind in taxes. They are in tax title, and I know a concern has been about the approach to these kind of properties. So they remain in tax title, awaiting judgment for foreclosure, but we, for both of them, would demolish before foreclosing on them. So they're both in that kind of, I guess, holding pattern. But once they're demolished, the city would foreclose on the tax title and take ownership of the property and hopefully find an abutter or some productive use for the lot.
Right, okay, thank you.
Joe?
Well, in terms of priorities, how does the city look at, which buildings to demolish when I know there's a lot out there that fall in the same category?
Yeah, I mean, demolition is always the last resort, obviously, for reuse of a building. So it's really a matter of public safety and the properties that pose the greatest risk to the public. There's also consideration of if it's something where the property owner is involved and there's a likelihood that we'll be able to recoup the money. Those are good cases to pursue, so they might jump up. But in terms of a situation like this where the city's looking at a situation, unfortunately, just based on the circumstances that have accumulated over years, decades of time, where it's not likely the city will be able to recoup. In those instances, it's public safety is the driving factor.
So in this particular building, is this the number one public safety building on the list?
Certainly, and when we, Alicia Zoller and I both submitted the application, and in that we referenced the fire department. The Problem Property Group has expressed a concern about this building, so we recognize and certainly the City Council has weighed in. So we cited all of those departments and city concerns and seeking demolition funds.
And this is number one of all our,
I guess it is hard to, how do you ascertain? Because if another building falls down tomorrow, you say, well, Paul.
I'm not trying to put you on
But
the spot.
I
I'm
mean,
trying
certainly
to
that
understand
would,
how it works.
Anyway, right?
right. Yeah, pretty clear consensus, I think, that based on all the code inspection reports and it's certainly in that top three.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to accept the grant, given what we understand about it. If we can do it, good, and if we can't, we won't, but.
So I guess just for clarification, so it's on the record, if the bids come back too high, I mean, I'd still say take them down. I mean, it's a hazard. But knowing that free cash hasn't been allocated yet, we'll find out when the order comes back, when that's gonna be. Oh, there he is. I didn't even notice you're here. The issue would be is we're gonna have to get free cash to cover it, potentially. So,
Because they're gonna rebid.
right, if you're gonna rebid and it's just still not coming down, because giving back this type of grant, you're saying could have a negative in the future. So once we accept it, we're on the hook for it,
In a way.
in a way.
In a way, but no.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that the building has to come down. So it's,
Figure it
I
out.
can't imagine a situation where we wouldn't be utilizing this grant. And, I mean, I would say the same thing to the folks that administer the grants. I mean, it really is something that, one way or another, it has to happen. I mean, it's a tough situation.
All right, so with that, the
No,
motion?
Yeah, that's.
Peter, you have a question?
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
just with the understanding that the 50,000 from the block grant money is allocated to this too,
Is,
right? Automatically. Or could it be more?
I think it is more, yeah.
I mean, could it be more than 50 if it comes in the bid 140,000 and could 90,000 take out of the block grant money instead of say 50,000?
Right, I don't know the exact amount, but I know it's more than 50 that's been earmarked.
Okay.
So I think it's at least 100 actually, that's been earmarked for it. Alicia would, be able to get the exact figure, but in any event, the match is certainly there.
Right.
We'll be
That's
out of
our
that money.
concern.
Yeah, that's the main
It's
thing.
really
that-
the
Yeah,
match.
okay.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept the grant?
Second.
Motion approved, it was seconded, all's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed?
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good night.
All right, with that, we have, let's skip the next two real quickly and go to 16 and 17, take up as package because they're here.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So remove items 16 and 17, all those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? We have the revolving fund for Wisteria Hearst, and we have the revolving fund for the Elderly Health Services Fund. So, want to come on in? And if the auditor has information on this, this we all know, it comes around every year as to these revolving accounts. The main thing why we do it here is, one, what's in the account, what's the amount? Two, how is the account being used currently, has there been any changes? And just a little bit about what's going on with it over the years. So it's our way of getting one look at it before it ultimately goes, okay? So who wants to go first, or?
I think mine will be quick. That fund actually hasn't been used since before I took over as the director. It was automatically being renewed, so I didn't say anything about it, and I thought that there was potentially future purpose for it. But the relationship that initially established that revolving fund, it no longer exists
So there's
between.
no money in the account? There's,
I believe when I looked on Munis today, there was about $1,200 in that account.
so you don't need the account, you want the account, you,
Do I want the account? I mean, there's potential that it could be used in the future, but I'm not wed to it one way or the other. Is that a fair answer?
well, with these accounts, we set them up to put money in there, and it's ongoing. If at some point in time, we don't want them, we can vote to get rid of them, and that's it. Now, if you try and come back and say, well, we need to, set up an account again to hold monies, it becomes problematic. So if you're saying you're not using it and you don't need it, then we can shut it down. That's why we have these type of meetings, to see if we want it. So it's,
Completely up to me. Well, then I
well,
would,
we can shut it down right now and say we just don't want it as a city council, because in prior auditors have said revolving funds are one of those accounts that they're somewhat okay, but at the same time they become problematic. So there's hesitation on these accounts. So I think it's for all of us to get on the same page and say, do we need it? Do we not need it? Is there another way for funds like this to be used, or we just don't need this account at all? It's,
I don't think we need this account.
okay. Okay.
So what happens?
Well, we'll vote to.
The
not
money,
renew
the
it.
money that's in there, does that get
It goes back to, I do believe.
Close to our Christmas party.
general fund or general fund?
Goes to general fund.
Cash?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. So With that, we'll
Good motion to,
next. Well, no, wait, I'm talking about this
The
bag, we
package.
can always separate it out and then procedure-wise, so. We just want to make sure, I mean, they're here, so we want to.
Thank you,
Don't want you
yeah.
to wait and listen to this thing all night.
The Wisteria-Hearst revolving account is all earned income right now. So ticket sales, if people rent for weddings, portion of that goes in there. That's about photo sessions, anything that's earned revenue is being put in there. It's kind of, I utilize it the first half of the fiscal year, sort of bank it up, and then once our kind of allocations for things run out in the second half of the year, start to switch over to use that. So it's used primarily try and reinvest it in programs, since so much of it comes from program tickets and things like that. It's what we would pay a concert performer or lecture honoraria, that kind of thing, reinvest it into programs. And then a portion of it goes into the staff costs associated with programs. So whether it's temporary event staff to cover weddings, or something big like the Nutcracker, and then that's kind of the match half of the part-time salaries that are in the budget.
Now, when we redid the budget, we allocated in our budget to pay for part-time, and then you said you were taking money from an account. Was it this account to then pay the offset?
So you all allocate me as like a roughly half of, say, one part-time salary, and then I match the rest of it in earned income. So it's sort of the way that we're able to grow and flex. So you invest in us, and then we use what you invest to earn this money to pay for the rest of it.
Linda?
Thanks. So if I'm understanding you correctly, whatever is budgeted is what you're staffing. And then if you're going above what is budgeted, you're using this to pay for the extra staff?
Not exactly. So the line allocations in our budget are about half of what the estimated part-time staff costs are at Wisteria-Hearst. So it's on me to earn the rest of it, and so the rest of it will come out of this account. So were we to drop income, I would drop staff, essentially, or drop hours of staff.
Okay, so what I want to know from a budget point of view is we've budgeted X amount in the budget, which is going to equal,
It's about 25,000.
okay, so that's going to equal 0.5 FTE, just for purposes of discussion. It might not be exactly that, but you have a full-time person?
Oh, no. It's all part-time staff.
Okay, so-
any
so-
two full-time staff are fully allocated in the budget.
So let me make sure I'm asking you this correctly, because I think we might be saying the same thing, but we might be saying it a different way. What I'm trying to make sure I understand is that if there is more money being spent on staff, that the staff is not being hired at a higher number of hours before you have the money in this fund to pay them.
There are year-round existing staff at Wisteria-Hearst who've been paid out of this fund, or the individual people have changed, but this fund has supported year-round staff at Wisteria-Hearst for a long time.
Okay, and so this was the big discussion that we had before the
Yep.
last budget, when we moved things into the budget, because there's also the benefit costs, et cetera, et cetera. So what is budgeted is what can be paid through the city. And so the extra that's coming out of here has to be available in here to pay anything that's exceeding the budget.
Yes.
And you're losing me when you're saying it's not there first, because it would have to be
The
there.
money is there, yeah. So
Okay.
so there's about I've been maintaining around 40,000 in the revolving account.
Okay.
And it'll dip a little bit in the
Okay.
second half of this
So
year.
you
But
have-
there's
okay.
there's always more than enough. Yes, going into I'm sorry, I did misunderstand your question. Going into any budget year before I submit a budget, I'll know whether there's enough to
Okay,
cover it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I just
yeah.
wanted, thank you.
Now, anyone else with a question? Joe?
Thank you. So the part-time people are paid per diem, per hour, and when you say part-time, there's no benefits?
That was the issue we dealt with
this.
last year, yeah. So there's 3 employees, they're not actually utilizing benefits, but they're part-time contracted employees. Occasionally, we have a temp come on or a staff that's paid per diem to mostly cover weddings, things like that, that generate their own, that the revenue generated from the event will pay for them.
So their hours are submitted through payroll to the treasurer,
Correct, yes.
and the treasurer takes the money from the revolving fund?
Correct.
And some do, because of hours, generate benefits,
Correct.
so they're not part-time.
They're part-time year-round, yes.
They were, if I can,
Linda, go ahead.
these were the people that were considered per diem, but they were really regular. And some of them were benefit eligible because of the hours they had been working regularly. That was the whole big
Yes.
situation.
So how much are the benefits costing us?
Currently, none of the three are utilizing the benefits. I'm not sure beyond that what the amount would be.
They get paid time off,
Retirement?
though, right? Pension.
That's right.
paid
They do
time
get,
off,
excuse me, yeah, they do get paid time off.
Pension.
Sick time, holidays? Retirement? Health insurance?
That they're not utilizing health insurance.
What am I missing? Is that, the benefits come out of this fund too?
No,
Comes out of the
City.
budget.
City fund, yeah.
That
City
was the
budget.
big.
That was
that
what I
my
brought up,
big-
Joe.
That was my big thing.
That was the one vote that said no.
Was I sleeping?
I made the motion. I mean,
I mean, we went
No
through this with the
offense.
library and,
Well, this
don't,
is a similar story, yeah.
yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, bringing in money and doing what you do is a good thing. But it's, the control gets lost very easily, and the loss of control causes more expenses to a city who's very strapped financially.
can I say, just, I think too, like, part of the background was that this was a corrective, that this had been at least a decade kind of thing at Wisteria Hearst, so it was correcting an ongoing problem in that way.
I remember when you explained that to us last year, I do.
Okay.
But I think if you go forward with the revolving fund, it needs to include all the expenses for what you're using it for,
The benefits.
which would be
too.
the benefits too.
Can we amend the use of the revolving, I'm sorry.
Joey,
Benefits are.
you got a question on that,
I
Joe?
was
or-
jumping in. I didn't know if you were
Are you
done.
asking for an? Oh, okay.
I guess if the primary things that you're asking about are holidays and sick days and vacation days, we would be paying for that out of there, because that's where their payroll is, I mean, that's included in the amounts that I submit to the treasurer. So I'd have to look into what, I guess retirement would be the thing. Okay.
Sorry for jumping in.
No, 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 no.
Do we have the ability to amend the revolving fund or?
Not here. You'd have to file an order to
to
readdress
and
it.
would it require an amendment, or would it simply be the proper use of it to pay all the related expenses? I mean, is it just a matter of clarifying the
Well,
understanding
no,
of the
you'd have to
use?
amend, in essence, you have 4 bullet points with regards to the revolving fund. Expenditures for funds shall be specifically for the purpose of labor, services, supplies, source of receipts and credits, the officer expending. So in here, if you want to make it specific, you would have to address it. In essence, that expenditures mean
Salary,
funding,
paid
salary,
time off, pension.
Holidays.
because and it might be, auditor can correct us, any money coming out of this revolving fund, is it going towards retirement? Is it going towards holidays? Is it going towards health insurance? Granted, they're not accepting it,
But if
but a
it
person
did,
does.
I believe most of that falls under the category called labor that you have on there, which would be their payroll and the associated expenses with the payroll.
Which would include pension?
I believe so, yes. I
not-
have to go
I'm
back
looking-
and
not
look at
looking
the
for a belief,
details of the
though.
past.
I'm looking
I'm not
for an
sure,
answer.
because I haven't actually dug into those accounts to look at the details of what has happened in the past,
That's what we need clarity on.
but I
Yeah.
will get you clarity on that.
That would be great, because if it's already happening, then we don't need to amend the revolving fund, but just to make sure the understanding between your office and your office is the same. that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so with regards to
So,
item
16.
16,
I'll make a motion that we discontinue that revolving fund.
this is to accept the establishment, so it's a motion to deny.
Which one is that, 16 or 17?
16.
Motion to deny the renewal would be
Yeah.
the proper
do not-
motion?
yeah.
Is it
Okay.
mine is 16, isn't
Oh,
it?
I'm sorry, am I looking, let me, no, not your, don't, oh, sorry.
That was
You write
17.
that, I don't
Which-
have the,
You got
Is
that?
yours the activities?
Mine is Wisteria Hearst Activities
yeah,
Fund, yeah.
yours.
Oh, okay, we thought the first one was
17,
first.
sorry, yeah, I have it before me, I'm looking at the
Okay,
17, right?
men.
okay. Motion to
So,
renew
For the elderly
revolving
health,
fund.
no, for the elderly health services, number 17.
Oh, you want to do 17?
17.
So motion
To deny.
to deny,
Deny it.
and that's because of the request that they're not using it, and they can do it other ways, so,
And return the money to
The
the
general
general fund.
fund.
I think we might have to dissolve it, Todd.
well, by denying it, in essence, it dissolves the account, because you're not allowing the account to go forward, and that's how Bellamy asked for it, when we were establishing the demolition one for Paul, he said, when they come back around, all you do is deny it, and in essence, you shut down
Shut it
the
down.
account, and the money in the account will have to go to the general fund. That's how they want it.
So
If
we
you want
don't
to do it
have
a
to
different way.
say that it returns to the general fund?
Well, I mean, it
General
can't-
It's automatic?
It has to go there.
Has to, yeah.
But I'll put a
Okay.
notation there, motion to deny,
So
that
it'd just sit there maybe, I don't know.
account be dissolved and funds back to general fund. Is that the motion?
Yep, second.
It was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That way we cover it in record. Now, number 16, I do apologize.
Motion to renew.
There's panic. Motion is to approve and renew the account pending auditor's update on what labor
Benefits.
services benefits are covered through this. Okay, so that'll just be for next meeting. Is there a second to that one?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that was passed 3-0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So here we have Roberts Field, Community Response Team, Community Field, and the Recycling Program, and the PEG Access one. So with that, if everyone who's here for that, come on down.
Oh, he's here for these?
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll make a motion to take up item 15, 18, 19, 20, 21 as a package.
So move.
All's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So 15 is the Roberts Field Complex. 18 is the Community Emergency Response Team. Number 19 is the Community Field.
Thanks, Mike.
Number 20 is the Recycling Program. And number 21 is the Government TV Access Channel, which really goes for Hoyoke High School. These are all revolving funds, just like the last two we dealt with. So with that, we'll turn it over to Mike. And Mike, which one do you want to talk about first?
The only one I can really talk about
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you were, okay.
is 20.
20?
20, which is the recycling,
Recycling.
okay. Now, with that, Mike, let me, before we, I'm sorry to cut you off, let me just check one thing. No, it just says Bartley, but I think it was Bartley, I think you were on it, Bresnahan was on it. Number 22, that the establish a revolving fund dedicated to recycling program. and recycling bins. I think several of us have filed this on and off. So 22 is a request to establish a revolving fund for recycling bins. And then 20 would be that we're gonna actually establish a fund. Okay? Are we on the same
Number
page?
20 is the request to establish the fund based on you guys wanting a fund established, which is number 22.
Which is number
So
22?
they're kind of one and the same.
All right.
Yeah, all
All
right.
right, so,
So should we add 22 to the package?
22 is complied with, maybe? Or,
Or we'll take it up later?
yeah, I'm
All
gonna
right.
say that's complied
All
with.
right.
Okay,
All right.
if you wanna do it that way. So with that, Mike, back to you.
Okay,
For
so-
number 20.
The recycling program revolving fund, DPW would use that to buy the large toters, the wheeled toters for recycling. And it would be in an effort to increase recycling in the city. Right now, there isn't a vehicle for that. We would either rely on grants or capital funds.
I'm a fan.
And I don't think there was anything in this year's budget for buying more bins, and we're currently out.
Now, with the revolving fund, it's coming from the recycling program,
Right.
and we get a check from that every quarter, every
Half a
twice
year.
Half a year.
So in item 22, Mr. Bartley requested some information, and I've tried to provide that information on the paper that I handed out.
Oh, right here.
Okay.
And so, one thing with the recycling is it's a commodity. You know, plastics are, the rebate for plastics is kind of based on the oil market, and paper is paper. And also as a commodity, as more communities start recycling, it drives the rebate down. This information was from Munis, so I could only go back to 2011. But you can see in 2011, the first half and the second half, we had rebate checks of $30,000 and $32,000 for the recycling that we did. But if you look at last year, we had checks of about $7,000 and $13,000 for a total of $20,000 that was rebated to the city for all of the recyclables that we collected.
Thank you. So as it sits now, does this money go back into the general fund?
Correct.
Okay, so we would have had 20,000 that we could have put into helping to
Correct.
increase the recycling.
Yeah.
And that would help the people who, let me ask this a different way. Do we have people that are eligible according to criteria that are still waiting for bins, or do we just have people that want bins that can't get them yet?
There's both.
Okay.
There's people that want bins because their neighbors have bins.
Yeah,
But there's also
people that are,
2 and 3 family homes
Yeah.
that have the boxes.
right, so they're legitimate.
There are still
Legitimately
legitimate
eligible.
needs out there
All right,
for the bins. And, you know, there's the question about the list. Is there a list? And there really isn't a list. It's when we get these bins in, we'll get 100 bins. And we try to do it based on who's going to utilize it the most. So it's not a first come, first serve. It's a judgment call. And the goal is to get the recyclables out of the trash.
right.
Right, and you want them to be full, you don't want them to be
Right,
a quarter full
right,
pick them
right.
up, right?
And then there's some neighborhoods where there aren't any of these bins, where people don't recycle. And the hope is that by making it easy for certain people to recycle, the neighbors will see it, it'll kind of spread from there.
Well, I'm all in favor of this, but.
Joe, did you have a question, or?
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry,
So
Peter.
we haven't acted on Counselor Bartley's order yet.
No.
So is it possible that the city council will not want to establish this fund?
It could, that's why we're taking up.
Okay, just
to
wanted
talk
to make
about
sure.
There's no fund yet, it's establishing a fund.
Mike, this shows us the checks that are cut for recyclables that go down to the MRF, what's our cost for recycling in the city of Hoyoke?
You mean in terms of labor, O&M?
Everything.
That, I would say approximately $125,000.
Okay.
And that's a ballpark because we have 2 dedicated recyclers. We have a spare recycler, but there'll be times where recycling falls behind. And when that happens, we have to allocate trash trucks for recycling. And trash trucks, the way Holyoke does recycling is it's dual stream. It's plastics and bottles and cardboard. And we do get more money back for dual stream than single stream. Springfield and Chicopee do single stream, where all of the recyclables go into one container and out it goes. So when we use a trash truck for recyclables, they can only pick up either paper or plastics. So at times we'll have to have 2 trash trucks going through neighborhoods in order to fully get the recyclables. So it's hard to provide an exact cost, but I would say it's around $125,000.
And I'm not sure if you shared what we're saving in terms of the tipping fee for the, if this stuff was not recycled. Are we converting it into tonnage as to what we're saving?
Right. So our tipping fee at UMM of Holyoke is about, it's $74.75 per ton. So I took the first week of the fiscal year, and during that week, we sent 34.1 tons of recyclables to the MRF in Springfield. And if we had to take those 34 tons and bring them to UMM, it would have cost us a little over $2,500 to dispose of it as municipal solid waste, which is about $132,000 per year if we project it out. If we said that $2,500 per week is true for every single week.
So I'm all in favor of, and you need to buy some bins. I'm surprised the mayor hasn't recognized that. But I'm not so sure the revolving fund makes sense. You know, if it's costing us $125,000 to run the program, we're getting, you know, a nice check back from the MRF and we're saving some money. I'm all in favor of it. But to dedicate a revolving fund to buying bins doesn't make sense. The money goes into the general fund to offset the cost of the recycling program itself. And what I'm afraid of in the long run is, you know, if our budget woes don't get better, trash pickup and recycling isn't going to be part of the services that we offer the way we offer them. And I don't want to push that along by not allowing this money to go into the general fund to offset that $125,000.
Peter and then Linda.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers here, and I see it's nice to get a check back to recyclables, but on the other side, the disposal, where, you know, there's, like you said, there's a lot of people that aren't recycling, that cost is really high, and it could be a lot lower if we had more people. You know, and I believe recycling is basically everybody's supposed to do that.
It is. There's an ordinance
Yeah,
for
a law.
recycling in Holyoke.
And penalty.
And they have looked at the trash that we bring, and it's around 30%, 30 to 40% recyclable. But all of that material, we're never going to get 100% recycling.
Right.
But we figure that if we can keep pushing the program, we might be able to get another 10 to 12% of that material out of our trash and into recyclables. And then if that's the case, we could save around another $70,000 a year that we wouldn't be sending as municipal solid waste, even if we didn't get any money at all for a rebate from recycling.
Right.
Any ton of recyclables that we can pull out
It's
is
savings. Yeah, that's my key is to try to get the stuff out of that. You know, the checks are nice, but to bring that cost, that refuse disposal down, and how do we do that? And I know Tim Price does a good job trying to get out there and see who actually needs the bigger bins and see who's actually recycling, who isn't recycling.
Yeah, and he does tag people.
I see it several times out there with the stickers and even some of your workers with the stickers if they notice something. And the other thing is the black bags I see out there sometimes. I always wonder, why do people have black bags? I mean, that's what you buy them at a store, but sometimes I'm wondering if they're hiding something. And how do those refuse guys, pick up stuff if it's heavy? How do they know what's in there? Or do they open them up? It's time consuming to even open all those up. And I know Tim does that. But I think it's to bring the cost down. And I don't know, I agree with Councilor McGivern. I don't know if it's a good idea to do a fund. I would just like to see, the money out of here, that the savings to try to buy the bins and to get more to people, not just the big ones where some people say they use a lot, but the average person on certain streets in the Highlands or Oakdale or Elmwood that don't even have a bin, that just take their refuse and just put them in the black bags or the big white bags or big barrels, and we don't get nothing. All it is weight, and it's dollars. That's my concern.
Linda?
Thank you. If I remember correctly, and I might be mistaken, I think we had a revolving fund once where we set up the fund, but we said if there was X amount of dollars in the fund in excess of, that they would return to the general fund if they weren't used for the purpose of the fund.
Right, not to
So
exceed, yep.
my recommendation would be that we do set up the fund, but we put an amount in it not to exceed. I don't know what the number should be. That, because what the problem is we have people who want to do the recycling, but they're not gonna do it if it's too difficult. And I think we could provide the incentive for the savings, but not make the fund like one we had that got crazy big. It just sat there and it kept getting bigger and bigger, but it wasn't accessible to the city. So what if we capped it at I don't know, how much, if you were to say you bought the bins that you think we should have, guesstimate, what would it cost a year?
The last time we bought bins, we had $10,000, and we were able to get a little over 100.
And how long did those last?
They lasted a month.
So
But
would it
I
be,
think if we did something like $10,000, at least it's something. We'd be able to get 100 of these. We'd be able to get them out.
so I would like us to consider setting up the revolving fund with a cap of 15,000. And that if there's money sitting in there in excess of that, that it would be returned if it's not needed. I mean, if it gets to the point where nobody's looking for bins, then we wouldn't want to keep putting more money into it.
Right.
Right?
I think that was the intent, the last several times we try to do this. It's
Right.
not to take the full
Right.
30, 32, 38, 12, 6, whatever the number is each half. It was to take some and put it in there. So I think the revolving fund would have to be drafted in that fashion, not to exceed a certain amount. I do believe in the bond, that we received that big bond, that ultimately we took a few things out and put away. There was a request for 50,000 in there for blue bins, or maybe 25, one of the
They
two.
could have been, yeah.
So it was in the bond.
Right.
Here, it's.
I don't know if that's something that should be bonded for, though.
No.
And that was,
I
well, we
wouldn't.
said that in the beginning, that's not something you bond for, so, here, we have monies coming in, and Joe makes a good point. You don't want to put all of it in there, because you still need money to cover the cost, but by not doing anything, we know we need more bins out there. So you have to, in my view, a compromise has to get some of this money before it goes into the general fund, put it into the revolving fund, to then start getting bins going. At some point in time, when there's plenty of bins, you can always shut down the account.
Right,
Right.
right.
Joe?
I could ask the auditor a question.
Sure.
On revolving fund revenue, Josh, this is an example of money that comes into the city that I'm sure is part of the equation of our cherry sheet as we're putting the budget together. when we take money out of the revenue side of the cherry sheet and put it into revolving funds, does that have an impact on what we're estimating?
It absolutely does.
Okay. That's the real problem.
Yeah.
Is, we're taking, and it's, revolving funds aren't supposed to be about day-to-day operational stuff. DPW, the recycling program, needs the bins. Find the monies, put it in the capital part of their budget, and buy the bins. When we take revenue out of the stream, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. It sounds like it's a great deal, but we put the revenue over here, and it's used for a good reason, used for a correct reason, but it takes away from our true picture of our budget, and what we're trying to accomplish is to make the budget more balanced and more efficient in terms of the few dollars that we do have.
Joe, I don't disagree with you, but as you and I have seen over many budgets for all different mayors, capital improvement costs aren't in the budget. And when you have to go ask for free cash to then allocate for it, we can't do it unless Room 1 signs off for it. So there has to be other alternatives to address it, or you just don't. You just don't get blue bins, and you just don't address cost savings through what we've been talking about. So for me, free cash hasn't been certified. Whatever that number is, still may not come before us. Whether or not you're going to deal with in the budget, we've seen time and time again capital expenditures not addressed in the budget. So it's a catch-22. So can you take some of the money coming in to allocate it towards blue bins? That's the ongoing issue. Yes, it takes away from the general fund because it's money that goes in there to offset cost. Once again, if you don't do anything, we're back to square one, which is there's no blue bins.
If a capital item is, and I realize there's a lot of capital needs in the city, but if a capital item is part of revenue producing, if I were mayor, I wouldn't wait for free cash. That would be in the budget that is presented to us in May and June.
You are correct.
And I hear your argument. With all due respect, though, it's shooting ourselves in the foot on the opposite end in the big picture. It's the same money to be used for the same thing. It should be in a regular line item budget. Revolving funds are getting out of control, and this is a good example of it. Where the first revolving fund we voted on was for ceramics at the Hoyle Creative Arts Center. Someone paid for, going to a ceramic program. The materials were provided. The money they paid went into a fund, bought materials for their next program. That's a revolving fund. It's extracurricular activity. Sorry, but that's the way I feel, and I cannot vote for something that, is not giving us the help towards balancing the budget and the stability of knowing revenues coming in for what we're paying to provide service.
Linda?
Thank you. I take Counselor McGivern's points to heart, and I really think over time it would behoove us to look at all of the revolving funds, because I think it's a more serious problem when we have a revolving fund paying for salaries and benefits than to have a revolving fund that is going to perhaps save us way more than we're going to put into the fund. So I sort of see it as a budget balancing matter, although not the standard use of a revolving fund. If we can spend $15,000 and save $30,000 to $40,000 of that potential 71 or 2, then I'd say that's doing a better job of balancing the budget than doing nothing. And we have asked, begged, harassed to try to get more bins, but if you can't get them, you can't get them. And so this is just the latest way of trying to make it happen to actually support the program that has in general been a very good program. So I hear the argument, and so that would make me open to capping the account.
Well, one thing on item number 4 within the revolving fund language, it says The limit on the total amount which may be extended from fund during fiscal year 2018 shall be the lesser of the actual receipts collected during the fiscal year 2018 or 25,000, which combined with all other revolving fund authorized for Master General Law 44, Section G, so on and so forth, does not exceed 1% of the amount raised by taxation in 2018. Now, the question would be is that number too high? Do you want a different number? Based on the revenues coming in, are you taking too much out of the
Yeah.
reimbursements?
Well, I would be open to making a motion to approve the revolving fund, but to modify the top amount.
You'd have to get a brand new, we can't amend these.
Oh, we can't?
So what you can do is you can table it with a request that they come in with a different.
Oh, okay. And so what is it, 25?
So based on the numbers we're seeing, do you want to say?
I would say 15.
Do you give a number? Do you give a percentage?
Percentage maybe, we might not get it
Or
at 50.
percentage, or what the auditor would recommend based on the receipts.
Mike, what would your thoughts be on this?
I'd be fine with a percentage.
What?
I'd be fine with a percentage. And if you look at the last three year and halves, I mean, there really isn't any revenue coming in.
Because it's dwindling. And I guess my question would be is you're looking, $10,000 get you 100 bins. How long does it take to get the bins? Is it a quick turnaround or?
No, I mean, there's supply issues with that. Nobody has these bins in stock anymore. They have to get a large enough order to do a production run, and we're only a piece of that production run, so we have to wait for that to happen. It does take some time to get those even 100 bins in.
So how long, like, I mean, I know it's
A couple
August.
months.
A couple months, okay.
But then once they come in, Tim is pretty good about getting them out. People.
All right, then I guess I would offer a motion to table so that Mike and our auditor can get back to us with either a percentage or a cap that would be reasonable. I really like this idea, though. I think it's a good idea.
All right, so there's a motion to table with a request for different numbers or percentages.
I'll second
In regards
that.
to that. That was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone here for Robertsfield? Community Emergency Response, Community Field Park, Government Access. Want to hear for any of those?
No?
Nobody here? There is no one here for any of them. I can try to give you what information I have, but I wasn't the one that established those or asked to establish them originally. I'm just doing my part to try to roll them over.
Okay, so
I do have some of the detailed numbers.
Yeah, the
on it,
numbers-
If you wanted to see some of that or hear
Community
some of
Field Standard, I mean, the park's been redone and they use the cell tower as well as the rentals and stuff. So that's a standard one we've seen. I guess we'll go with that one. Let's hold on for a minute. You just did 20, it was tabled. So make a motion to remove item 19 from the table.
Second.
All's in favor, all
Aye.
opposed, that's the Community Field Park. What's in that account?
The current balance is $37,276.
And the cell tower is still paying into that, correct?
Yes, they are.
And how much they pay in each year?
This past year was $44,000.
And how about receipts from renting out the parks or the tables and all that?
We had just over 8,000.
Okay.
So is the balance going up in the account?
So the,
In the current year, the balance actually went down in the account. I don't have the detailed expense listing with me,
Okay.
but I can tell you 52,000 of it was for personal services, and 34,000 says other charges and expenses.
52,000 for,
So
is that
that's-
to pay the employees to cover the park, to
That
lock
would
it up?
be staffing. I believe that would also be some of the, maybe if you'd call it purchase services for any subcontractors, if there's anybody that has to come in to do any work.
Cutting their stuff.
But I do not have the detail with me on it. I just have the general overlay budget report.
No, it's actually, that's Kevin's
Oh,
word.
that's Kevin's. Oh, that's right.
I would like not DPW, I'm not picking on DPW. You're just here. Park and Rec
Parks.
to come in on that one.
Okay.
So I'll make a
Table that?
motion to table that one, because I want to know what I understand they have employees up there, and it's great, they're locking up and everything, but I want to know what those expenditures are for.
I'll second that.
All right, so the motion is to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Make a motion, move from the table,
15?
item 15, the Roberts Field Complex.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Second.
Aye.
All opposed? Roberts Field, what's in that account?
That has a balance of $31,709.
And what's coming in for there? That's renting the field and everything else?
It looks like 49,000 in revenue this year, with 32,000 worth of expenses. So the balance actually went up by 17,000 in the previous year.
And what were the costs for, 32,000 of costs?
32,000 worth of costs. It has personal services of 8,400 and other charges and expenses of 23,600.
Electricity? Okay,
Oh,
that makes sense then. Okay. Upkeep.
DPW or parks. Yeah.
All right, so that one's kind of standard. That doesn't sound like there's anything different there.
I just have
Yeah, go ahead.
a general question. So in general, do we look for the revolving funds to maintain sort of a steady balance, to be going up or down? I mean, to Counselor McGivern's point of it's outside the budget, kind of? What would be the fiscal perspective on that? And it doesn't seem like we should be building all these little slush funds.
Yeah, I would
But I don't know,
imagine
you
that,
know.
that they should have some type of balance in them going
Right.
forward, because you don't want to run them dry every year.
Right, but
But
they
I,
shouldn't be like
I don't
going
know
up
if there's a
every year.
set number. I'm new to revolving funds myself, so I don't know if there's a set number that should be like a benchmark to look for. I can do a little more research on it if you'd like to.
Well, I'm just, to Counselor McGivern's point, that if all this money is sort of sitting there outside of the cherry sheet, et cetera, it seems like we should have some sort of a policy about them. I don't know.
You're right, that's why we have
I
them
agree.
come each year
Come each year to
go
find
over.
out.
Right,
yeah.
right, but I mean, he gives us a report, and then I'm not sitting here knowing 3 years ago, was it 37 or 50, or, I mean.
Well, if
I
you
don't-
want, we can have him run a report on all these, table them.
But no, I'm not saying, I'm just interested to know what the financial perspective would be relative. If they're increasing X amount, that's okay, if they're,
If they're just always breaking even or just.
yeah, that's all.
I'd be happy to do a 3 or 5 year look back, whatever you guys would like.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not looking for all the data, I'm just looking for your,
And
Professional
in that,
opinion.
I can actually look into some of the details, like you were asking about for the other one for Community Field, and see what some
Well,
of
it
the
might be
detailed
electricity up
expenses
there
are
as
too.
well as, I mean, does. would
But
this cover the
personal
winter?
services
'Cause
was a
that
lot of
ice
money
but
in
when
that
you
one, so.
start seeing a lot of personal services, what is it?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for the salary and stuff, yeah. Yeah, if you can get us a breakdown as to what, in each account, what they're paying for and the cost. Joe, sorry.
Just
Joe.
on the Roberts Field, what we probably want to look at is the idea of the original establishing of it was for when the property is rented to, especially larger groups for a football league or, you know, for events that take place there, that the city is not paying for the cost of running the event and any extra costs that come with the event. And then any wear and tear, you know, can come, you know, items to protect the track or to protect the field, you know, can come from the revolving fund, so to speak. The day-to-day use, whether it's the high school or whether it's our residents going in to use it to run, to exercise, is part of the city side of the budget, but the revolving fund is supposed to be only for the extracurricular activities.
I mean, what we could do with these accounts, I mean, we always can approve pending info.
Yeah.
And then if we don't get what we want, just send it back.
You want to do these one at a time?
Well, item 15, are there any questions? That's the Roberts Field complex.
I'd make a motion
you
to
know.
renew it pending the receipt of information, just so we can keep it
Okay.
going.
So it'd be a motion to approve pending cost update. Is there a second to that?
Second.
So there's a second to that, and that was all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The next one is the Community Emergency Response Team revolving account. How much is in there? Oh, I'll make a motion to move to the table, sorry.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So item 18, the emergency response, how much is there?
That one has zero balance and zero activity for the year, so I don't even know if we need it. I'm not sure exactly who established it. So I'll have to look back in the notes to when that one was established to try to get some more info on it.
I think that had something to do with the veterans group there, and plus the, was it the health department? I think they had a CERT, they called it the CERT team, in case something happens. But I don't know, like I said, I don't know much on it, but
Let's make a motion to table that then until we get a,
answering it.
what it is and why there's no funds in it. There's no activity in it over the last year or 2 years? Or?
Zero activity this past year. I didn't look back 2 years, but I would
there money
I would
in it at
imagine
all?
there's $0 balance.
Money? No.
I don't know if it's even ever had money in it. I didn't look that far back.
How about we table that one? Can you get us information, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's table.
What's going on and whose it is?
Yeah, it looks like it's the fire chief that's supposed
Yeah,
to
it's
be.
fire.
Yeah, I thought that was,
Now, let's make sure he is on board with that one. So motion is to table. All those in favor?
Second.
All
Aye.
opposed? Community field was tabled, and then the recycling was tabled, then all right, so the government PEG access, make a motion to move number 21.
so
All
moved.
those in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? This one is the access channel, and this is the money that would go to the high school, correct?
Correct.
And how much is in here?
Did we ever approve that last year?
No, we didn't.
I didn't think so.
How much is?
It looks like it has a fund balance of $135,000 and change.
And did money go in and out of it?
It had 91,000 in revenue this past year, and it had 61,000 worth of expenses.
It doesn't matter if we renew them.
So, well, here's, that's, and I'll get to Joe in a minute. This came up as
It was not renewed?
establishing a fund.
It was not renewed.
We never acted on it until the people came in to kind of figure out who was the new media, who was this, and where the funds were coming from. And they finally came in. They were very nice people, and they gave us a lot of information. But we never set up this account.
Oh, that's news to me. I
So
wasn't
how
here
did
when that was set up.
91,000
So.
go in there? Is Joe, are they doing this, Joe, is there an old account?
I'm not 100% sure, but what I think we're looking at is, and what we've been told is not going to change, is the money that is diverted from the PEG access money to the Holyoke Public Schools, who then come back and are in charge of running the PEG access channels. Now, part of that, because we saw a gentleman here last night from the Holyoke Media Group, which is getting the rest of the PEG access money, looking to help out with the problems we're having with video, audio, and sound and everything. And sounds like the Holyoke Media Group may eventually take over the PEG Access channel. If that happens, the big question I have is the money going to the public schools, I'm not against it, but what is that paying for compared to what it's paid for in the past? I believe if this is just the public school monies, this is the way we've always diverted the money through this fund.
So this is
But-
the old account that's been there.
Now my real question is, where's the other $1 million going? Oh, there's an account right now that's
From
close
the
to $3 or
cable?
$4 million.
You mean from the cable fees?
They haven't used it for,
That's- Haven't used it.
yes,
That's
they haven't
going over
used
to
it.
them.
Sitting over there in a separate corporation.
Right, that's going
That's,
to
the
their,
point is, the city's gotta be in control of that.
But we're not.
But we gotta be, we didn't establish that, and we're the ones that established the original PEG Access to be the city council president, the solicitor, the mayor. It's a corporation that dissolved and made another corporation
Right.
without coming back to the city council. Communities across the country have had problems with this type of fund being misused. I'm not saying this group is misusing it or intend to, but where's the accountability?
But how can we correct that? I mean, I don't know.
so 91,000 went into this account.
That's what I see here, yes.
Okay.
That is a number that I remember when I sat on the original PEG Access as what was diverted to schools on an annual basis. It was like 30, 30, and 30, I think, because the money comes in somewhat quarterly or, incrementally. I'm not, I don't want to say I'm 100% confident, but I think that's what we'll find out, that we did establish this fund. But we need a fund for the rest of the money, and we need to have accountability for that money, even if, whether it's the Holyoke Media Group or whoever's, in what they're doing. But the accountability, because the money is still coming through the city and going out.
So what they told us is that the CPA involved is Dave Morton.
Always has been.
All right, so can you call Dave Morton and get a full accountability as to all the money in whatever account is out there? What is been put in there, what has been spent, I guess, and what expenditures? I mean, and that'll help? Or that'll address, it doesn't help address in the sense of the city looking over the funds, but at least we can find out the accountability.
I think it's transparency and accountability that are the two key things we need here. And we don't have it if our city auditor doesn't have his pulse on every dollar that comes from PEGAX, from the cable company, then, we got an issue here that needs to be resolved. It's like the charter schools, who came in, who's the financial guy with the,
Oh, the guy from the state?
yeah,
Soto?
No,
Anthony.
Irish
it
name?
was,
Mahoney and Alone?
No,
No,
Anthony Soto.
oh, you're
Now?
saying-
Now, yeah.
Soto.
I've sat in this chair for years and looking at a budget for schools saying it's $7 million. He sat over there last May, June and said, no, your budget is 90 million because 30 million goes to charter schools. This is what this is. It's money coming in. It's being funneled through the city.
yeah.
We need accountability.
I know, but the people that came in are now set up as a 501c3.
So was the original PEG Access,
original one.
but set up by a vote of this body. I've said this for 3 years now, and,
I know.
you know,
But the mayor and the president and the city solicitor,
we haven't had a city solicitor until
at
recently.
the time,
The time. Acting.
took that vote and did whatever they did.
I'd love to see the minutes of that vote. Because they didn't meet for 2 years before that whole thing was established.
I don't know.
All right, so in order to address Joe's question, and I do believe we requested it from them, and they said yes,
We
because they're a
did.
nonprofit, an accounting of everything, and they said not a problem. I do remember them saying that.
Yeah.
So can you call Dave Morton,
Absolutely.
get all that information. I mean, with this, since it's going to the high school, and I do believe this is the old account, Joe.
This sounds like the number that has been traditionally going to the public schools.
So for
And
me,
they did it anyway without us.
The department is in the high
it
school.
went in anyways, Joe.
It just kept going.
No, they have a, they have a budget, and they're counted
they
every
have,
dollar they
yeah.
spend. And we used to look at that at least twice a year. They would come back to us. It also includes, what's going on downstairs. It includes our operator that comes in,
Right, Brian.
Brian, and Mike Hines, I think one or two of the salaries is also paid up there. And Mike Hines has always been working in this room, working downstairs, and, it's also what they do with with their media stuff at the high school, which includes the stations, but also includes the shows, what am I trying to say, how they put the shows on, the other PEG access channel for the school committee and stuff like that. So
Well, at
it's,
least they came in this year.
Yeah, no,
So I'll
no.
make a motion that we,
Well, I can make a motion to approve pending a report
Yeah,
from
approve
him
this
regarding what Joe
revolving
is
fund.
asking for. Okay?
pending the report.
don't be afraid to tell me I'm wrong, though.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all.
So, is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, so all in
Second that.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So that one would be done. So, item 22 is Counselor Bartley's, which is establishing the revolving fund, so I'll make a motion to.
Open
Yeah,
table it?
yeah, make a motion to move from the table.
So moved.
All's in favor,
Aye.
all opposed? Since we tabled 20 with a request for new numbers.
Yeah,
Make a
so
motion
we'll-
to table it.
Table
until
it,
we-
yeah.
Till, table with item 20 for numbers.
All right, so,
I'll second that.
Real quick, if
Sure,
I can
go ahead.
ask Mike just real quick. The 100 bins, Mike, are you talking about the small bins or the larger bins on wheels?
Larger bins on wheels.
All right, thanks.
all right,
All
so,
ones too.
The small bins cost, I think they're like $10 each to us, $7 to $10. And we maintain a supply of those with our existing budget.
Okay. I didn't, when you were talking, I thought we were speaking of both. So it's the larger bins that are hard to get.
We would only buy large bins with the revolving fund.
all right, so motion is to table it. It was seconded. And all's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Can we go back to 13 or no? 13A?
13?
Actually, there's two 13s, so we never did those, did we? Leahy, the tow contract?
13 is, oh yeah, so Leahy, since he's not here, I mean, we can, that was tabled because he had to give us some information and.
Okay, so that's table,
we'll-
but
So we'll take
13A?
that up yet. I do believe Mike is here for
14?
14?
Sorry, I was trying to find you here.
All right.
Let's take up that, because get your moment already.
Taking item 14 up off the table?
Second.
All's in favor? All
Discussion.
opposed? Here, several traffic lights. We're back to the traffic light and crosswalking issues. And we wanted, options ASAP. So that's the order by me. Mike, what do we have?
So we're working with two vendors, two contractors, Ocean State Signal Company. They provide the controllers, the lights, the switches, the mast arms and the posts, and another one, Down to Earth Construction. They're electricians. Last week, the two of them went with Joe O'Connor and Sebastian from DPW to each one of the top 10 intersections, and also Cherry and Homestead, to do an inspection and an inventory of kind of an existing conditions. This is what's there now, so that they can come up with a scope of what's needed to just bring the signals up to current standards.
And we're just waiting for that report?
We're waiting for that, and then DPW is going to estimate the site work component. So if any sidewalks and handicap access ramps or conduit would need to be installed we would come up with a number for that. So I don't have the full-blown cost that you were looking for, but it's coming. We did get a preliminary estimate for Dwight Street and Northampton Street, and they said that would be similar to Hamden and Northampton Street. And the cost was about $70,000 for equipment. That's the controllers and the signals, the pedestrian buttons, pedestrian countdown, and the electrician for the wiring. And then we've estimated that it would be about $30,000 for site work in order to install those. So each one of those intersections, we think would cost about $100,000 to get the signals to current standards.
Now, when you say signals, so we're all on the same page, that's just for crosswalk, or is that all the lights too, red?
All the lights, red, yellow, green, and
So the
pedestrian.
entire, everything there, taking it all out, redoing it would be
Right.
about 100,000 per intersection.
For the equipment.
For the
But
equipment.
now what that doesn't cover is having an engineer look at the timing for that intersection. We're working off old timing sequences. It may be prudent to have somebody come up with a new sequence for any one of these intersections. It also doesn't cover if the city has a traffic signal maintenance agreement with DOT, then they would have final approval over the signal work. And then they could say, the signals are great, but the infrastructure of your intersection isn't compliant. Your lane widths aren't wide enough. You don't have, you need a bike lane. Who knows what they could say? But, and they could say lots of things because they're DOT.
Yep.
And if we have this agreement with them for any of these intersections, we're under their jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah, we know about DOT.
What this would do, though, our hope is that we could at least get the equipment in and then worry about the upgrading the intersection at a later time. Because that would be engineering time, design time, review time, public hearings, all of that. And I think the goal is to get the equipment upgraded.
Yep. When will the report or final numbers come to you?
I'm hopeful by your next monthly finance meeting. And I know this is probably what, number 6 or 7 that we've talked about, traffic signals. But I really do think we're getting
I
somewhere
don't
with it.
blame you, Mike. I'm just gonna keep raising this stink because I think it's a serious safety hazard.
Yeah.
It's bad. And I don't blame you. I know the bonds have come in different ways, and we're just gonna pick on the bond until we get it, that it totally addresses everything correctly. That's all. It's not, we just wanna get it done as
So
soon
it's
as
clean,
possible.
right?
Yeah, make it
But
clean.
so it's a
One
clean
sweep.
bond for this, and it doesn't end up somewhere else that we can't see. Sorry, not directed at you.
No, it's. But does anyone have any questions for this? I mean, since it's my order, I'd be more than happy to say that we'll table it until we get that report for
report.
next month. And then really get into it, and then the question would be is going back and getting a bond to address the whole thing.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. So if the equipment was installed, it would be set at some standard signalization, right? I mean, it wouldn't just be sitting there blinking, right?
Right, we would use the current approved timing sequence.
And then we'd wait till all the calls and we'd say, Mike. Our
But at least,
constituents are calling.
at least they wouldn't be going into flash mode
Exactly, and
at,
at least it would be working.
right, 7 o'clock in the morning.
And for the Dwight Street because I did speak with Joe on that issue. He said the wiring, he meant I could be dead wrong how he said it, but under the ground was just shot.
Yeah.
And that, they're gonna address all that as well, all the electrical on that and
Right. So it would involve new conduit,
everything.
new wiring.
Okay. All right, so with that, I'll make a motion to table until the report finally comes in.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Oh, and thanks for the stop lines. Pardon? Yes. Thank you.
That's tabled. Make a motion to remove item number 13.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This is Counselor Leahy's order on all tows. He said he was gonna come back with information, so I'll make a motion to table again.
Second.
So we can guess the info. All's in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Make a motion to remove item number 23.
So moved.
Or that, so all in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Or that the mayor or designee provide the city council with the rental for, City Hall. I did receive an email,
Yeah,
and I think you guys did
Yeah,
too,
I did.
on the form and
from Ryan.
the standard cost versus who gets an exemption. So I can always send that to Counselor Bresnahan.
Yeah, can we put a thing, no running, stomping and pounding?
Where'd you get the thing? I didn't know if I
It
got
was emailed to us, yeah. Rory sent it to Ryan and Ryan sent it out.
to everybody.
I did, I got it. I mean, it's buried in some junk right now, but I
I
know
got
I
it just
saw
before coming here.
I didn't have time to read it, but I did receive it.
So what we can do is we can say that this was complied with, get the information to Counselor Bresnahan. If he wants anything else, he can always follow back up with it. Want to do that?
All right.
All right, so motion complied with. And if Dan wants anything else, we can always send it back to committee that night or have him file another order. So the
Yeah, he
motion.
sent us the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So, motion is the order is complied with.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Uh, 24, make a motion to move from the table.
Second, aye.
All in favor, all opposed. So here, receive a copy of the contractual agreement between the city and Frontier Management for Lynch School. I just received an email from Marco saying they could get us a contract, but it's over
Yeah.
because the time frame ran out back in December. So they're going back out to bid.
Did,
So right now, there's no contract, there's nothing. We own the building
And we're maintaining it.
and we're maintaining it.
Oh, so then it would be complied with because there is no contract.
Right, now, that the city receive a copy of the contract. I just took a quick view of the email. I don't know if something was attached or not. Let me take a check.
I don't think so. I got it here.
But the answer is there is none.
Well, there would be a contract, the contract that was with Frontier. There is a contract. We had one. Now.
It's no longer.
But it has expired. So let's see here, there's a bunch of attachments here.
Of course, he filed it in August, the order, so maybe.
Well, this looks like a purchase and sale agreement. Yeah, so I do have the purchase and sale agreement. So I can forward that to everybody. So in essence, this
Right,
would
well,
be complied with.
he
But they,
filed the order over a year ago, so.
Yeah, it is over a year,
What he
yeah.
was seeking.
yeah, so complied with.
Comply with that.
So motion order is complied with. And I'll have Ryan send a copy to everyone.
But don't we have 4 proposals on the school now? Isn't there something that came forth on that property? No?
No, I
I
think they
mixing
said
that
they
up with
just went out to bid again.
RFP.
For the school?
RFP, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So motion order is complied with. Second to that?
Second.
Seconded. All is in favor?
Aye.
All is opposed? Then we'll have Ryan send that to everyone. And then, number 25, in accordance to, oh, so there's another grant for the Medal of Honor.
Monument.
Take it off for discussion.
All right, so move from the
Second.
table, all's in favor, all's
Aye.
opposed. This is the Medal of Honor Monument Grant. Are you here for that one, or? Yeah?
I have a
You're
little,
in- you're
I have a
in.
little info on that, but he can start.
All right. So with that, welcome.
All right, so for what I can speak to on this one, this is an Office of Community Development situation here, where they have the ability to get a grant for $7,500. The total cost of the project is $17,000, but the rest of the funds are coming from community development block grants and some other funding sources, other grant type of money. Not really grant, I'm not exactly sure what SHRAB is, but that's the city cost. The only cost to us is the in-kind labor by the DPW to install it.
Do anyway. Okay, so,
Hold on,
That's
Peter.
Yeah, I just got,
that's what I have.
I'll just give a little info. And
oh, okay, it's a little premature.
I had a gentleman, I met with somebody on this. This is the Medal of Honor, the 3 Medal of Honor award winners we have at the War Memorial, and we want to get a stone over at Veterans Park for them. And Mr. Jim Bronson, who's part of the Purple Heart Society here, I spoke to him the other day, and it's basically having a fund for the money to go through the Office of Community Development to $7,500, and I believe other money to the grant is $7,500, but the other money is going to come through the block grant money. He's trying to get a figure where I think he's working with Holyoke Memorials over on Sargent Street and trying to get a
That
reasonable
must be the
price.
17,000.
Yeah, might be, just trying to get a bid. I think it went out for bid through the RFP, through the process through purchasing. So he's trying to get the price down, and I think it would be a great addition. It's going to take some time because they have to get some plaques made up and they have to put them on a stone, or maybe like a stone that you'd put in the cemetery. But you want to have the 3 over there, the 3 Medal of Honor ordered, because actually he was really fighting to have 2 of them, because 2 of them were actually from the same block in South Summer Street. That were Medal of Honor winners, lived right next door to each other down by Morgan School. At one time, there was actually a park down there that had a big celebration, and there was actually a monument down there by the school.
Where'd it
And I
go?
guess it's gone now. I don't know if it was actually a monument or a dedication to these 2 gentlemen that were actually living next door to each other in blocks down in South Summer Street. So I spoke to him. He was going to come down tonight, and I said it probably won't be till about 8:30 or 9 o'clock that you get to it
How'd
unless he
that
came
rate?
down. But
Oh, we would have taken him.
I know you would have took him up, but I said there's nothing really. I mean, I could relay that to everybody, and he was glad of that because he had some things to do tonight. But he's going to keep me informed, and I'm going to meet with him again on this. And I think it's a great project, and with the cost coming through the block grant money and through the grant, through this, I think it's really a benefit to 3 Holyoke heroes that really gave their life for, not only for their country, but coming from this community. It's really something I think is special. And we're trying to maybe work it around maybe Memorial Day next year, because it'll be too close for Veterans Day. So
And it'll properly go in Veterans Park.
Veterans Park, right, in the right way, yeah.
So, yeah, the estimated cost is 17,000. Grants is for 7,500, 9,500 from the block grant, and then in-kind contribution gives you your totals. So, and then it gives a list of the recipients. So what we can do is, Linda was already making the motion, so.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Motion to accept.
I second that.
No, but that was a nice summary. It's important
It's important, yeah.
have that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Did we miss any because we went out of order?
Don't think so.
We got them all.
Grant. These were all packaged. All right, seems like, since you're here, sir,
Absolutely.
there was an order I filed, we really can't take it up, but we can get an update since you're here for, free cash certification, where we
right.
stand for.
That's right.
All our filings, what's,
Our favorite question.
where are we?
All right, so just so you know, I'll be happy to come and update you guys at every finance committee meeting if you'd like. I have no problem
That would
coming
be
and trying to update you guys every single time. If for some reason I can't make it, I can send you an email with an update on where we're at with everything
That'd
too.
be great.
Yeah.
Be good.
I would like to be able to establish that as something that we just do regularly so that you don't have to file an order to make that stuff happen. So first off, let me begin with the injured on duty we were talking about earlier. I did go back and take a look, and the current one I just got, as well as the previous one during the month of September, looks like there are now only 3 on the police department and 1 on the fire department as injured on duty.
So this was a burst of some sort.
That's what it looks like. I'm wondering if it's one of
Could've been
those
a few months.
summertime bursts.
Could have been a few months back and stuff too, yeah.
So, you know, things are more active in the summertime, especially with, you have more fires in the summer than you do in the winter typically.
And running
More
and
calls
chasing
that they're
and
going
just
to, and
stuff.
people get hurt.
Yeah.
More people are outside having things happen during the summer than they are during the winter. So
I know one of
the one firefighter is the one that is long-term.
long-term,
So
okay.
it doesn't look like any other active firefighters are an issue at the moment.
That's good.
But I
right,
will
well,
still
that's-
go back and check
that's
overtime
good
numbers,
news.
et cetera, for everyone.
Thank you.
And so update on, you know, the big question is free cash, obviously.
Saves the best for
I do not have a number yet. We haven't actually officially closed our books for last year yet. That's going, as far as Munis is concerned, that's going to happen next week because we want to do it in conjunction with the school department as well, so that we're both closing at the same time and moving things forward in the right steps. I've been,
Is this is later than usual.
last year it was a week before.
Right. Well, yeah, well, we had an issue with that, trust
Yeah.
me. Prior years,
Going
why are we
forward.
getting later and later? is
Going
my
forward, it's going to be earlier. This was simply because there were a few items I hadn't received from some of the other departments that I just got, 2 weeks ago, so we were able to post those. And it's also the availability of getting the help from Munis to close, because I've never actually closed in the Munis system before, so I need some kind of IT help to do it correctly so we don't screw something up. I've also been going through all the different accounts to try to make sure that everything looks clean to me, because I don't want to go into my first year here with dirty books either. My first full year.
For you, yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's been one of those, just trying to, cross my T's, dot my I's, and my lowercase j's. So as far as free cash is concerned, I do not have a number yet. I was looking at it with Bellamy the other day. It does not look nearly as good as what he had projected earlier. He had said $1 million to $1.5 million is what he was expecting. I don't think we're going to hit $1 million. I think we're going to be less than $1 million, and I think it's mostly due to the sewer fund and receipts not coming in as well as we had hoped. But I don't have all those numbers with me right in front of me, but there's a whole big, long calculation that goes into it, so I'm just not as optimistic as he was.
Well,
I'd rather be on the low side and have it come out better.
well, and to your point on the sewer fund, over a year ago, the city council approved and adopted legally the ability to combine those bills. I just talked to the water commissioners informally the other day, and the thing's still bouncing back and forth, but I understand it's through legal now. I think I filed an order to get an update, because this is ridiculous. To take 2 years to make a contract, to combine a bill.
Add another year onto that, Linda, because I started that whole debate. It's software to combine the bills and get it paid.
But the
And
whole thing was the fight with the mayor about it wasn't legal, yada, yada, yada. That took a year, then it took another year. Then it was like, oh yeah, it really is legal, so, and now we're another year with them batting it back and forth. The main issue being the different departments want to make sure they get paid for the services they're rendering. I'm like, so write it in the contract.
Yeah.
You know, it's
so
not rocket science. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. And that's why.
We'll file an order. I want.
I
an
think
update
I
as
already
well.
might have for the next meeting.
All right, throw me onto that, please.
So to give you a little bit more on the free cash side of things, I'm working with our auditors to try to determine exactly what we will have for free cash. We are working on that. I'm hoping to have an answer by the end of October, beginning of November, of what we're expecting to put forward for certification. So within the next, 3 weeks or so, I hope to have a more concrete number for you.
4 weeks, you think?
Yeah, 3 to 4 weeks, yeah.
The optimist picks
Before the
four.
election.
The realist picks 4.
I'll wait till the day after the election for you.
Let's see if I did or not.
All right, so, we can always ask for a free cash update. Yeah, I'll have her sign me on to that. I'll do that.
It's over there.
Okay.
And I'll give you a free cash up as soon as I have more info. I'll be giving you an update.
Yeah. But
Anyway.
if those bills were going out, your water's gonna be shut off if you don't pay.
Absolutely.
The money would be there.
Yep.
It's there for the water company.
All right, so
I mean,
with
that part of it is probably 600,000 to 700,000 of coming off of free cash.
Right.
Well, I'll stop it there, because I can always ask for that update, but anything else, that's why I filed the order, I have to come in and give us a full detail on the whole department, so I won't be out of order on open meeting law, so I'll stop us there. Any questions?
Yeah, I just had one. That email from Marcos, he mentioned about the revolving fund for the bicycle share? And his message, when he talked about Lynch School, yeah.
Did we miss that in here?
He sent a related note. I see that there are several revolving funds. Bicycle share revolving funds is not there.
I
thought it'd
believe
be-
that was put forth to the council. I just don't know if it ever made it on here.
Said we tabled it. I thought it had been tabled to taken up next meeting. Could you please advise?
We tabled it at our last
Last meeting.
finance meeting?
Previous.
Yeah.
We did?
Do you have that, the bicycle share?
I don't know if it was tabled. I'll have to take a look back and
Okay, if you
notice
could.
notes to see.
I'm just
but
saying a note that he
I
had
mean,
sent in tonight with the thing regarding the Lynch School.
I do know a
From
little
Marcos?
bit about it.
Yeah.
It's a fun to have a bicycle share with, I believe it's with multiple jurisdictions, so Northampton and East Hampton.
Right, I thought we
and
talked about it.
Holyoke
Was it our
and-
last council meeting or was it the last finance meeting? I remember someone bringing that up about the bicycle share program.
Yeah.
And I thought it was Marcos about, getting the bike in Northampton, East Hampton, Holyoke.
And they were looking to establish a revolving fund on that.
Oh, no, it was, okay, no, it wasn't last meeting, it was a prior meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bicycle share program, the reason it was tabled was we spoke to the representative, we invited them in.
Right.
The representative couldn't make it that night. He requested that it be tabled because there might not be a need for the revolving fund here.
Okay.
That was the response, that was from Pat Beaudry. He
That's
was
what
the
was passed on, that's
representative.
right. Yeah.
So that's why we tabled it.
Okay.
So it wasn't that we
That's
didn't
good.
like bike share or anything else. I don't want that out there. We don't
Right.
like
Well,
bike
it's-
share.
think
It
it's a
was
great
a
idea.
request by
Them, yeah.
the party
By them to table
themselves.
it because we might not
Correct.
even need the fund. From what I had gathered through my discussions with Marcos on it, I believe it was one of those things where one of the jurisdictions could basically handle all the financial aspects of it, and so that way the other ones could have, the bicycle spots,
Right.
but not actually have to deal with any of
So why would
the
we
back
wanna
end of it.
deal
Right.
with
So
So
it'd basically be, free use of well, not free use,
No,
because people
they-
pay for it, but use of bicycles without
Right.
having
No,
any
no, we're-
costs associated.
We have no
Right.
problem with
We-
bike share. It
we
was
like
more
that idea.
of, do we have to establish an account here? And they said, we'll get back to you.
Back to you, okay.
I'm just waiting for a response from them.
So we're waiting.
That's why I remember.
That's
it.
what he said,
I
yeah,
thought it was a
Mark. I thought it was
grant they
something like
talked about, it's a revolving fund, yes.
Revolving fund, yeah, okay.
It's amazing I can remember some things.
See that? We all set
Nice
on,
thing with the thing on it, table.
how about a motion?
With that, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you for coming down.
I'm gonna try to get you everything I can.
Have a good night, everybody.